Hello and welcome to Westfox. I am joined by Shepard and Hunter today. Thank you for joining us, man. It's your first time with us. I know you guys have done a little video we'll have up here in the near future, but it's your first time joining us on the main show. And with St. Patrick's Day coming up tomorrow, we are going to put together we're putting together essentially one of our favorite movies of a cult classic nature, Boondock Saints. Mm-hmm. And really, we were just discussing before we started, what is a cult classic? What defines it to us? And so I was going to toss this over to Hunter. And what is a cult classic to you, man?
Thanks, Westfox. Again, appreciate you having me on the show, having me on the channel.
Very welcome.
It's great. Good to be here. So right away, the first thing I did this afternoon when I knew we were talking about this was just look up the definition of cult classic. It is defined as generally a piece of media, usually either a movie or a book, but it could be a TV show, it could be music, whatever, that has a very specific following, a group of people that follow it, that may not appeal to everybody. Let me read you the exact definition. Is actually something, typically a movie or book, but any form of media that is popular among a particular group or section of society. So,
and I'll double down on that because, like, actually, what you were just saying yourself, Fox, that's like, I believe it was you, Hunter, where you said it. You're saying that's like, although it might be a small group, that small group believes that it was
everybody should have seen this movie at some point.
Yeah, there was something transformative about it, or something that was, and I don't want to say like deep, but there might have been something existential in that sense that it goes, man, you need to watch that to understand this, or to really get that moment.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's one of those ones that strikes a chord, and it's one of those chords that not everyone's going to have it strike in the same like level of force on it.
Sure.
When I was pulling up some of the facts, we were just talking about this, which is it was not an expensive movie to make. It was $6 million. But the number that I did not realize is I knew it had not done well in the box office, but I never realized how it didn't even really have a box office with its essentially its box office showing of 5 theaters for 2 weeks, and it pulled in essentially $30,000, which even with inflation or anything, that was like, wow, I didn't realize it pretty much didn't even release. And it never even felt like a movie this small, because a lot of times the smaller films, to me at least, have that kind of smaller feel or smaller film feel. This one doesn't, to me specifically. Maybe it's because the actors in it, with Dafoe and being in it. Maybe that's what pulls it, because when I probably saw this, I already seen Spider-Man, the first one with Tobey Maguire, and so that was probably my earlier introduction to William Dafoe as an actor. So I already considered him a bigger mainstream actor, and so that was an interesting thing. The other thing that's interesting on this, it was the domestic video sales that kind of put this into the mainstream. To date, they've estimated that it's actually sold about 50 million domestic video sales, and even the crew and the producing staff had to sue the company behind it all to get paid. Essentially, it was a lot of
really
money going up. We didn't make money, and one of the interesting ones in there too was they talked about in one of the articles I was looking through, which is they suspect that Harvey Weinstein actually blacklisted the film. It's one of the reasons why it did so poorly in the box office. Is he was actually one of the original people that worked with the director and writer, and that later on, it was Troy Duffy, and they had met and done some stuff, and he essentially they didn't get along at a point, and so there's a lot of speculation that he actually kind of pressured people to be like, which we know, at this point now, after all the Me Too movement stuff, where we know that he would throw his weight around on anybody, so that's not it's not exactly a surprise there. The other one that I've seen this one before, and it was always one of the ones. I know I'm hitting a lot of points here, but it was always one of the ones that I always throw this as one of the Rotten Tomato flaws, which is the critical to the audience score. And we live in a time now in the last couple of years where there's a lot more review bombing on both sides, positive review bombing and negative review bombing. Look at Doctor Who. The fans have pretty much a 0% on it, and the critics have a 99% on it, to show you the difference. And again, this one kind of shows you that where you have 335,000 people have voted on the movie. And I would say majority are actual people on some level, because this movie is so old. Who's review bombing this movie at this point? It has no value to it.
Right.
Who's putting the effort into it? And then you have the critic count of 27, which, which the critics hated this movie. Critics did not like this movie. They considered it overly violent, etc. And which I think, which actually, to be honest, surprises me, especially coming off the 80s and 90s, where I consider those movies violent.
Didn't Terminator come out just a few years before that? And we're gonna say that this is gruesome?
Yeah, I feel like the stuff we've seen in Picard is sometimes more violent than what, maybe it's shorter violence, but there's some more violence in that than this. So that's kind of the rundown. I asked the question to you. So for me, the cult classic is one of those movies that I said doesn't hit the mainstream. I would probably, if someone's like, what does that mean to you? I would say it's something the mainstream never picked up, but it has that dedicated fan base, like you were saying, that percentage of people that have seen it and go, oh, and it's usually who has seen it has liked it. So kind of like the movie, that other comparison I compare a cult classic movie, because I almost didn't compare this into a cult classic until I started to see the numbers. I'm like, oh, it really does fall into exactly what a cult classic is. Mm-hmm. The movie that I always kind of personally associate with the cult classic is John Dies at the End. One of those kind of wacky movies that I understand why it wouldn't do well in the box office, because it does not really geared towards a mainstream audience, which a lot of these kind of movies aren't. But when you watch it, and if you can sit down and watch it, enjoy it, you go, oh, there's a lot of interesting, fun, quirky things in it. So,
and I think for this, for the Boondock Saints specifically too, I know, especially since there is, the second one that came out, and I definitely know, looking at the second one, I don't see the second one as a cult classic. And I think one of the reasons too was it might have just been the style itself, but the camera work in this one, since it's that nitty gritty kind of, it looks low production, and yet there's a high level story, and maybe not saying like in the sense of intelligence, but it's a well written, well thought out story, and yet it looks grungy, and I think that's kind of like, it gives an underdog mentality.
That's the attraction to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it kind of hit that right tone of that gritty, because sometimes movies try to be gritty, and this one kind of, in my opinion, was relatively organically gritty. Like even this opening scene here, this with the church and stuff, there was just the looks, the actors, they did a good job with the actors, because a lot of the hard work is done by the actors, which is, story and the actors will a lot of times make the movie great. And this full cast, I asked my wife, I'm like, what stood out to you in that movie? And she was like, it's the chemistry of all the characters. I'm like, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Across the board, every character has this unique chemistry. And that's probably, again, why it has for people who find it the cult classic, has lasted so long as a movie that stands out, is because every character feels like they have a place in the story. And it's not a huge cast, and that's what kind of works with it too. It's a kind of a small story, but it's kind of except the vigilante story.
Yes. I might add, and I'd be, kind of your guys' thoughts as well, but I know it was actually Hunter who introduced me to the Boondock Saints as watching it. So thank you for showing me probably one of my favorite Irish movies. But I would say one thing that I think, especially for men, is the brotherhood element of this movie. Yeah. The extreme brotherhood element, I think, definitely for gentlemen in that is something that we look into and really strikes an emotional hammer. I mean, it really does.
I really like that comment. I actually really agree with that, because I feel like a lot of movies use brothers in friendship as antagonistic points. It was one of the reasons I go back to the movie. Have you guys both seen? I know you've seen it, Chris. Black Panther.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite elements of the movie was actually, I thought, the brother-sister relationship with him and his sister.
Between T'Challa
and his sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even though I thought that was one of the stronger points of the movie, because it was refreshing to see in a modern cinema movie a brother and a sister, or a brother not be depicted as either opposites or antagonistic people. Because I feel like that's usually how I feel like a lot of times there's the good brother and the bad brother, or they don't get along, or it's not even or it's a mean-spirited not getting along, not a healthy competitional level like we have with our brother. We'll razz each other and stuff, but like we would do anything for each other, and we can all hang out and have a good time. But it's not like
you torture each other out of love,
right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
We're never looking to like make each other fail. Where a lot of times when they have brothers and sisters, I feel like in a lot of modern media or family members, there's a sibling actively looking to make another one fail, which is really sad because that's not what film is about.
It's this
friendship.
Theory.
No.
What's
I would
theory?
agree, but
like the stab in the back, like you said, they use it as a trope all the time between family members anymore. It's getting old.
It's supposed to be shocking, I guess, that the brother's like, "Oh, you're the one who betrayed me." It's like, but that's all the time.
Yeah. Like spy movies.
Did you have anything to? Well, I was gonna say, did you have anything more to say about the Hunter, about the theme? What I said on there.
I kind of wanted to spin off Fox's comment about the actors and the chemistry and so on and so forth.
Go ahead.
Like you said, you could tell with each scene, the acting was at that healthy competition level. They wanted to try to outdo each other in every little scene. And you can tell that they had so much fun working together. And I think that just makes a world of difference. That
the scene,
you get the finesse in the cult classics of acting essentials and acting greatness that is often lost in big box office style movies these days. Mm-hmm. Where you can kind of get the feeling like, oh, the actors are just there to get a paycheck or to get their name out,
Yeah. No, I agree. It's all about.
Not to say that there's not good actors that do big budget movies, but
well, it's like something I hear a lot from the media and a lot more where it's like, and even from like artists and a lot of sense we're hearing they're more like, well, I did this art for me, and obviously there's a part of that, but when you're making movies, when you're making art, it's usually for someone else at the same time. That is kind of more like to sharing that art is kind of a huge portion of that sense. And like, I get like, there's a difference between saying I want my voice in there, but saying, well, this was all for me. So if you don't like the movie, it's like you made a movie that you wanted audience members to see, to go out and pay for.
Don't you want your fan base to enjoy what they're watching?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a single character in this movie, like you said, that you don't get invested into. You grow to love these brothers and their goofy friend, and you want to hear more about their backstory. And the villain. Sorry, not to cut you off.
Oh no,
you're
good.
The Russian mob boss. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but you've never loved to hate a villain.
I think it's Ivan.
Thank you. Never loved to hate a villain more than him.
Oh yeah.
Like truly, just.
You want to see
bastard.
You want to see the brothers and the good people prevail, the vigilantes prevail, and you want to see the bad guys really take some comeuppance.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like and you enjoy to see them take it. I know we're going into the scenes there, Fox, and if we are speaking of razzing brothers, well, I want to go to one scene because I want to.
Cool.
Yeah,
we can hit any scene specifically. I didn't have a. We can totally do that. I don't. So just so you know, I don't have any specific scenes. Like, there's only one specific scene that I want to talk about in relative to kind of modern media. But beyond that, I just knew this was a good scene when we're talking about brotherliness, and I just remember the scene always is they're running down the thing like, why'd you buy the wrong rope? And the wrong thing. And they're just
good stuff.
Get the effing rope.
Yes, I love it, and
it's too good.
And William Dafoe's character is the glue of this story. He is, there's
great.
all
he
the
is
elements.
Absolutely great in this movie.
Zany,
having
but
so
brings
much
it all together.
fun. And the way they edited it together is he's like going, there's 8 bodies in here, and I love there's like however many bodies in this room in this scene, and he's like, and they fell down, or like I think he actually overcomplicates it, right? He's like acting like they're precision, right? I think in this one he's like, oh, they were so precise, and they had like all his things are like, oh, they were sneaking in, and they came in, and they were like do, and then they cut to what actually happened, and they're like,
falling down from the
falling
grave.
through the roof.
Their success is through failure.
The ceiling.
Man, we're good.
Yes, we are.
Usually there's that one guy that jumps over the couch and you got to be shooting him for 10 minutes.
So good. It's so good.
But to speak on that joyousness, but for anyone who has watched some of our prior videos, there's a moment, Westfox, that you said something that is exactly from this movie.
Really? Oh.
You did. We were talking about symbolism, but somebody said symbology. And
I heard about this.
Anyone who watches that video, please go back and watch the video because Westfox here says symbology, and then look at me as I sit there and go, symbology? Isn't it symbolism? Symbolism. So there's that one.
You pulled an Irish cop move on that one.
Yes, it was. You. The second one.
That's beautiful. I make it work
Joel,
occasionally.
Fox, we need to get you a proverb book because it's mixed.
The mix and match shit's got to go.
Am I mixing stuff up?
Is there another bit? I don't know.
You're mixing your metaphors occasionally.
I love it.
It's
I
great.
love it. I'm at to leave that
great.
intact.
So I had to. I forget which one that you mixed it up because you said something. Oh, I think you said, what was it? You're like cream of the. What did you say? Because you're like it was the creme de la. I think you said it was the creme de resistance. That is what you said. You said the creme de resistance, and I sat there and I was like, so. Can we go and find that the mix and match scene just so everyone knows what we're talking about?
Yeah, where is that one? I forget where it is.
I believe that's earlier in the episode.
It's in the bar. It's close to the beginning, I believe.
Okay. I know they're getting the bar here after.
And then while you're finding it, I think this really speaks to, like you were saying, just
let's see.
This scene coming up just shows how. And even this part, just like the levity and the wit. Yes.
So we'll have to see without going too deep into. Let's see.
I'm not sure exactly where it is, but
because who says it? Is it one of the brothers or is it?
It's one of the brothers.
Yeah,
it's one of the
it's
brothers.
the bartender that's talking, and then the brothers kind of, are joking around with them.
It might be right
before
this,
that
probably.
or so.
Yeah, it's probably right here.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is Here
we go.
Right here,
Let's
I think
see.
is perfect.
Audio mixed in.
There might be some curse words, so.
I don't know if
You're
want to
under
bleep
18.
those or
Don't listen.
Yep.
Oh, let's see. Mix audio.
don't tell your parents you learned it from us.
Right.
Your trap shut. Well, you know what they say. People in glass houses sink ships.
Well, that's
Keep it going. Keep it going. Keep it going because then he gets the comment.
Buy you like a proverb book or something. This mix and match shit's gotta go.
What penny saves worth two in the bush, innit?
And don't cross the road if you can't get out of the kitchen.
Okay, yeah,
That's good.
That's good stuff.
That is good stuff. I forgot about that part.
Hunter and I quote that movie verbatim quite a bit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's
On a pretty regular basis, anyway.
My pipe is exceptionally smoky today. I'm actually surprised by that. But, that's why we're having fun today. Like I said, having fun today because it's nice talking positive about a movie.
It's like being in an Irish pub. It's just like being in an Irish pub,
Right?
You just sit back and enjoy.
I have my tea,
I almost
which
feel
is
bad
not
that we
very
don't
Irish.
have a nice whiskey for this.
I know. I really thought about running and grabbing a bottle
I
of
did think about
Jameson
it
or some Guinness.
too. But I did instead is I made a brownie.
A St. Patty's brownie? Okay.
No, it's just a normal brownie. That's not allowed here yet.
Yet. Anywho,
Moving on. I think
Moving
that's
on.
what makes cult classics good too, is your mindset. Kind of, if I can bounce off that real quick. Not necessarily not that we're saying you need to be elevated in any way, shape, or form, but just the fact that in the definition it says it appeals to a specific group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's gonna like it, and that's
True.
okay. I'm sure there's people out there that have seen, Boondock Saints, for example, like we're talking about, or how about Napoleon Dynamite?
That's another good example.
That
Actually,
seems
that's a
to
great
have
example.
a very cult following. Donnie Darko, a lot of those movies.
Contemporary, I might say Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
The Carl Urban one that came out.
Yeah.
Kind of almost in that.
But it seems like there's no in between with them. You either like them or you don't.
They're
I'd
like
agree.
Glocks.
Right? That's actually kind of a good example.
Or Porsche.
Or Porsche. Yeah.
Is there any specific
where we're
scenes
going.
you guys want to talk about in the main film itself?
I think it's important we at least show one scene where they get the full prayer in.
Ah,
Oh, yes.
We'll actually go to the scene that I love, and we'll tie this in.
And we do have to have a Willem Dafoe scene.
Oh. How about the firefight scene
Preferably
for that one?
Yes.
firefight.
So in the current culture, in a lot of movies, there's this thing that keeps getting brought up, and it's called subverting your expectations. And it's used a lot these days as a mark of a creative film. So if you tell your audience we're going to a seafood dinner, and then they give you McDonald's, they're like, haha, you can't complain because we subverted your expectation. And I find the scene here, this scene specifically, is the quintessential example of when a well-done version of subverting your expectations. Because there's this character here. Actually, I'm going to turn off the audio so we don't get tagged. There we go. So it kind of goes into this scene. So we'll actually do this one. We'll do a little bit of audio here because this is great. This is the beautiful. This is why Dafoe owns this movie as the best actor on this one, or best. He gets best supporting. He would.
Oh, yeah.
Hands
absolutely.
down best supporting. So here we go. Actually, might need to go back just a hair on that because. Oh, come on.
So we can actually hear the full, there was a firefight.
Yes, because that was the whole. Here we go.
What if it was one guy with 6 guns?
Right? That's why I love it.
They exited out the front door. They had no idea what they were in for. Now they're staring at 6 men with guns drawn. It was a fucking ambush. This was a fucking bomb dropping on Beaver Cleaverville. For a few seconds, this place was Armageddon. There was a firefight!
Oh, so hilarious. So this character that it has the 6 guns on him, he's built up as he's kind of the John Wick of this movie, to use a contemporary example.
Yeah.
He's the angel of death. I think that's what they call him, right? In the movie, he's actually like something like that. They call him the angel of death in this movie. I might mixing our movie up with that. But he had a rule, the rule was fun.
El Duce.
And then the rule was fun. He doesn't kill children or women, which was interesting. And so you have this character that's built up and is lethal, and
Incredibly.
incredibly lethal. And that leads into, let's see here. I feel like they haven't had this. Oh, that's right, because they escaped that scene, right?
Right.
And then they have him.
They all get shot in one way or another. I think that's where Rocco
here it
loses
is,
his
yeah.
finger.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, the scene with the iron. They're cauterizing their wounds.
I know. We don't have to show
I
the
went
way
too
that he
far.
does his little lip flutter when he's a girl. Willem Dafoe.
it's
And that
hilarious.
little scene when he like kicks her off. He's like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like it's so simple, but it's like again, it's like, God, you're a brilliant actor. Like,
I'm trying to figure out where that part is, because the part when they're downstairs. It should be around
Right.
here, right? Where is that?
It's just past this. It's going to be towards the end of the movie.
They're doing the thing with that.
Are we talking?
It's when he comes downstairs. When
Rocco?
Yeah.
We're talking about Rocco. Rocco!
Oh, maybe it is right
That one,
here.
yeah. It would be.
Yeah, it's right around here. I think it's.
I think if you stop right, yeah.
Because we'll do the prayer in here too. Because yeah, he's going in here. Oh yeah, because this is when he does all his thinking around, and I love that the cop joins them. You know, William Dafoe's character, he's like he does so much funny things in this. He's his homosexual character, but he's also like slapping his guy he's just sleeping with. He's like, "Don't be gay." Like,
Cuddle. I can't say the second part. We'll get off.
We'll let
YouTube.
you watch it.
Cuddle, you bundle of sticks.
Yeah, it was just like so funny on the little.
There we go.
Here we go. So this scene,
YouTube friendly,
right? But because it's not a YouTube friendly movie, so that's why. But like, it was just
not at all.
Right.
the interactions of characters. Let's see here. This part here. Oh,
No, go a little bit back.
yep. I go like a little bit. Here we go. I think.
But do we want to get the? Okay.
The music.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing.
Agreed.
For thee, my lord, for thee. Thou art descended forth from thy hand.
That our feet may swiftly carry out thy command. We will flow a river forth unto thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be. In nomine Patri, Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
So good, so good.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
I got
Right.
Corona.
The
We don't have any beer.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. We don't have any beer.
The scene. The reason I love that scene is because it has this huge buildup with them fighting this guy, and they lose their friend. They're injured. They're in a really low space, and he's coming in, and you're thinking he's gonna get him, and they start doing the prayer, and he immediately is like, "Oh,
Like,
yep,
yeah.
and he's like, I'm on your side, and it's like I said, that for me, this is when people are like, what's an example of a good subversion of expectations? I'm like, this to me is one of my best examples, because you're waiting for a more gunfight, and what it does is actually something better, because this guy isn't the main villain in the story. He was an obstacle that is turned into an ally due to because like I said, I do appreciate one of the elements of the story, which is kind of the literal level that they're agents of God in the story, because a lot of times because it's a vigilante story, a lot of times the vigilante is like a Batman character where they're kind of just situations do it, but in the story, at least in this narrative of the story, I do appreciate the level they are kind of like their own angels of death to the enemy. Like they almost are somewhat in the story, because they have the whole scene where they're like literally like that hand of God touches them kind of type thing. They're like, you have a mission now, and they're like, okay,
Yeah, the water.
Right.
Well, and I think that's a decent. That scene in itself, and I can't remember the quote now. I was just talking to Hunter about it. I think like a day or two ago, but it's the quote. What?
Oh, about righteous men.
Yes.
Okay, so at the very beginning of the movie, I got you. The very beginning of the movie, they're in the church, and the priest, whomever, is giving his sermon, and he gives the story of the gal Kitty that was stabbed and yelling for help, and nobody helped her. And the priest makes a point of saying, we must all fear evil men, but let me try that again. We must all fear evil men, but what we must fear most is the indifference of good men. Meaning, men that have good hearts, that turn a blind eye to things that they know they could change, or do something about, especially if it's morally good, have almost an obligation to do it. And so it sets that tone of they are going to be driven by a higher power the whole time.
There's a certain righteousness to it.
And you feel that. You always feel that for them. They never feel like bad guys. They never even feel like anti-heroes. They're wiping out scummy individuals and cleaning up the streets of their city.
And then the deaths themselves, there's the prayer and there's the respect.
True.
Still that pass, I think, very much of the same way that, like Assassin's Creed, the Requiescat in Pace at the end of it, it brings that sense of, obviously I know Ezio is a little bit more driven by revenge at first, but by his later games and like his storyline, it very much is, it's that same thing. It's, I'm doing righteous work, or I'm doing work that needs to be done, but that doesn't mean then that I disrespect these people. There's still a level of like,
I may be taking a life, but I have respect for the soul.
The fact that I am
gone.
taking that life, and
I'm gonna wish it.
It's
still
not
well.
done out of lust for blood, but a desire.
Exactly.
To, and I believe there's a Benjamin Franklin quote. It's a founding father that talks about I think it's one of them, and it's essentially, which is all it needs for evil to rise is good men to do nothing. So it's similar in that space. And obviously in this movie, the actions that are taken are illegal, and high level things that
don't go
an average person
would promoting being a vigilante.
Yeah. Don't go find your nearest gang and put on your pea coat and try to have some fun.
But the idea that if you're to do right, I think if you take it to the basic moral of it would be just don't do nothing. I think that is a general lesson that is good to anybody. It's that if you see, it's all the times you see something happen and they're like, especially in current day era where, people have things where someone's getting attacked or something's happening, people are just videotaping it and not calling the police.
Sure.
In those kind of situations where, you might not be able to get involved in it, but you can do something. And I think that, since we live in times where, in the old days, if someone did something, it's kind of like even the sense that we've lost this, where you go back 50 years and you were a kid and you did something wrong, you're going to get a smack by even a random adult going, what? No, you don't get to do that.
Oh,
and now
yeah.
And now we live in an era where you spank your own kid in public and you might get a call from, someone's going to call CPA on you and be like, I'm going to get you in trouble. And, that's the difference there, and at the same time, it's sad because, we used to run around on our bicycles miles from home and go in the
never
things
had to worry.
Never had an issue. And nowadays we live in times where you can't really do that. I mean, you can if you live in certain areas and stuff like that, but not on the same level of confidence you used to be able to, where you're like, nothing's going to happen. And this was times when we didn't have cell phones, like, hey, be back in an hour, be back in 2 hours type thing. And then you go back even farther.
It was the be home for dinner.
Yeah. You go back even farther.
Be home before dark.
Yeah. And you go back into like 10 years older than I am. So I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. And so you got even to like growing up in the 70s or early 80s, that time when you can actually do stuff. And he was even more loose, where you're like, people are like, you just like go do things and you're running around. And I think it's the movie Good Will Hunting, but they're running around the city as children. And I'm like, yeah, you never have that nowadays. Like that just doesn't work.
Oh, no.
Well, and I think then too, that's a huge, I think, draw of this movie, why a lot of people like it, is everyone likes that sense of true justice being meted out.
Yeah.
Because so many times we see it, like, because obviously there's a fantastical moment, like you said, no one needs to be going out breaking the law and trying to be a vigilante, but protecting people, being involved when you can do it in a safe way for yourself or those around you, I think you should take that responsibility. I think that's why people like seeing someone say, I can do this, I'm going to do this.
Here's a great example right now. I'm going to take care of these people. Right now when we're doing this video, there's a event happening worldwide that involves, it's called the beard virus. And, people are out there and there's legitimate reasons for fear and there's legitimate reasons to be mindful of it. There's no reason for panic. Absolutely. But when you have people, there are people out there who are like, I don't care, I'm going to go out there and lick things and that kind of silliness and I guarantee, and I guarantee there's out there people out there who are actively going, I'm going to spread it because it's stupid. And those kind of things are also those dangerous things where you're like, don't do that. Be mindful of what it is. I mean, we know people out there, there's people out who spread STD type stuff out there intentionally. So there's people out there who are sick and shouldn't do those kind of things. It's not healthy or on any level of morality. And so I think that in parallel, a lot of the times to do good, sometimes you have to do a self-sacrifice thing where it's not like sacrifice yourself, but do things that make yourself uncomfortable. Like, hey, I might not be able to go out in public for a couple of days because I'm sick. If you're sick right now, it's that along the lines of don't go out because don't spread something that we have that doesn't need to spread. And it's those little moments, I think, in the sense of doing good that are positive. We don't want anarchy out there. And again, this movie isn't really promoting anarchy because, again, we all know that in reality, if you did the stuff in this movie that happened, you would not survive because that's just how the world does actually work. But it's a good movie.
You can tell the brothers at the beginning, like you said, when they get that light of God moment right there, everything changes for them, and they are willing to sacrifice their lives should it come down to that.
Because they view themselves as the protectors of their own, friends and family.
Yeah.
Willing to sacrifice their life.
Sure.
And again, like I said, I think that's what's always a draw to anybody. But I know, again, that's like both the themes of brotherly love for each other, and then for those they care about is something that I just believe that all men understand, and I think all people do understand. But like I said, I know men we're a lot more. We are the protectors, and it's nice to see it. And I know that it kind of goes back to like you were saying. It's always nice to see positive brother relationships, positive male relationships to others or to each other. Because then it's like, like we said, we all rib each other, we all razz each other, but there's a huge difference between, like you said, bringing someone down and then chipping at someone, or maybe saying, like, I think a better way to say it is like working the muscle. I think as men to brothers and to other people, we work the muscle. We kind of we bend you a bit, we make you work it.
We want to ruffle your feathers. We don't want to completely pluck you.
But then it grows back. It's always that sense, like you break it down, you stretch it, and then it gets to get stronger. And that, I think that's so much of a better way, and it's nice to get to see that. Like I said, in this movie, for sure, that was a huge part for me that I really did enjoy. Obviously, I have my two brothers, I have my other brother here, so to get to enjoy shows that really get to say, this is positive. This is, the positiveness of that morality, of saying, care for each other, care for yourselves. Maybe don't care for your girlfriend's cat.
Yeah, watch out for your girlfriend.
If you remember the name, then fine. But maybe not the cat.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that in times of where we are now, where things are tossed around like toxic masculinity and things like that, I think that the important element that is lost in a lot of conversations these days is kind of the virtuous element of it, because you can throw in words like, being nice. Well, nice doesn't always mean nice, in the sense you can be nice, but it can have a level of fakeness behind it. You can have, there's a lot of things that
it's nice to give a guy a fish, but is it better to them, or but I would say it's compassionate to teach them how to fish. Because then you're helping them in a long-term sense, not, I gave you a fish, here you go. But that's just being nice for a second. It's a very one-moment thing.
True. And I think that's an element of it. And the reason I use the word virtuous, and I like the word, is because it's kind of the behavior that has, showing high moral standards, right? We hear the term virtue signaling because because that's kind of it's used a lot because it's deriding when people just say things to sound virtuous. Right. But it usually, when you see this, it's usually someone degrading something, right? This isn't good enough because of this, or this is bad because of this, or but not being like, this is you don't see, like I said, there's a kind of a morality behind it. It's not really consistent, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a consistent morality. If you're going
I said the same thing in my notes earlier. Not to cut you off, but just
go.
These cult classics, these cult movies, all seem to have a moral message, a moral standard that they hold themselves to, that they expect the audience to take something from and be able to apply it to their lives.
Yes.
That was something that I saw time and time again looking at different cult movies just in general. I went, well, okay, that's kind of similar to that because of this reason or whatever. So it's interesting drawing that connection, and then that you mentioned it, because morals are a huge part of these movies.
No, and it's a good
asking
point.
Questions, asking tough questions usually too, like things about life and death. What do you believe? What's going to happen? Is it right to kill? Is it wrong to kill? How should you act when this kind of stuff happens? They all hit very highbrow notes and ask you important questions in a way that I think, again, gets kind of glossed over by a lot of big budget movies. That these ones seem to always have a way of touching on very
No, I think you hit just exactly where I was going to go, which
intimately.
is a lot of the newer stuff, in my opinion, and I would say probably with doing some research into it, I could probably statistically prove it. But in a lot of current movies, there's a very high level of nihilism, and when nothing matters. And in a movie like this, even in the world that there's a value to the life. So they start doing the prayer. They're showing that
Absolutely.
they value the life inside of it, versus a lot of current media where people are tossed away. Where we talk about Picard a lot because the show I've been watching, and they kill off characters like crazy. And in shows like Game of Thrones, it works because that's kind of the trope of the show, which is, hey, we're going to give you a character to like. And that show doesn't really completely live in a nihilistic world, but you take that level of killing characters off, and you turn up the nihilism level where you're like, nothing matters, everything dies, and you take away the reason why choices matter. Because in the end, if a choice doesn't matter, what matters? If your life and death of any character doesn't matter, if who you are doesn't matter, your choices don't matter, it throws into space of like, well, then why should I invest any mental energy into this?
Right.
It's almost like the Kenny syndrome from South Park. Like, you kill him so many times, eventually you just kind of don't care. You just expect it. Yeah.
That's a good example. I don't watch South Park, but I do know that's the joke that Kenny dies a lot.
That he always dies, and the next day, they all wake up, or the next, week on their adventure, they don't remember. Back. It's just he's back again.
They're like, he's alive. That's funny.
Yeah.
And I know, kind of to maybe like a little bit higher level of what you guys were saying too, and I know Hunter, you might agree with this too, because when we did some years of theater together, and we did some compositions of us creating a show. And I remember that a few of our upper classmates, when the shows that they did, really wanted to be existential, really wanted to be deep, really wanted to push boundaries that they thought were there. And then on the opposite side, our show, the one that we were writing, was originally supposed to be a comedy. And then by the end of it actually turned into something of far more intellectual, organically, because of how it grew and how it changed and just what we were going for. And the other few shows, I remember like everybody else really was trying to go for something deep, and it came off corny for most of them.
It came off forced. Yeah.
And I think that's something that I notice a lot for, and I think that's where I know sometimes for me, I see that difference in cult classic to Hollywood blockbuster is sometimes they think they're trying to be deep, and like you said, either they force it, or everything else is taken out more by the set, the screen, the effects, and the story suffers. And I think that like so many times for cult classics, I think critics might not like them because they don't like the message, or they don't like the production quality. But it's like at a story level, they're far stronger than I think a lot of blockbusters that have come out. Like I would put this story as enjoying it way farther than I put most of everything that I've watched in the last 5 years of something else. I mean, it's just like, and again, it's like when you try to push an agenda, or if you're just trying to push, like I said, a sense of, like I said, you're just trying to be deep. It's like sometimes you don't have to try to be deep.
Sometimes it feels like you're trying to shove it in the audience's face, like, oh, look how smart I am. you don't get my story, or you're going to have to watch this 3 or 4 times just to understand everything that's going on. And don't make me feel like I'm stupid watching a movie, because I'd like to think I'm not, but
or don't tell me that it's like it's a simple it really is a simple premise, and they go, like you said, it was actually a simple premise. They go, well, you just don't get it because you weren't intellectual enough, and you're like, no, it was just a really simple premise. Why are you trying to make it better? But I think then too, with that, reminds me of something that Hunter said to me off screen as one of his final notes about cult classics that I think perfectly encapsulates a lot that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I just happened to mention in our conversation before getting started, cult classics, in my opinion, aren't something that you can actively write, like a horror movie or a comedy, for example. They just kind of happen. They're very natural feeling. And the ones that are good, the ones that have stood kind of the test of time for being, low budget, only making $30,000 in the box office, you're still hearing people talk about the Boondock Saints today that have either been fans of it for years or have just recently seen it and have fallen in love with it. Mm-hmm. People are still getting Boondock Saints tattoos, or Boondock Saints inspired tattoos. Shoot, my chest piece was inspired by their little prayer, so it is what it is. You either love it or you hate it, but you can't force it to happen. It has to happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's a huge, like I said, the organicness of what it is. And I think you guys are on the point with is when you try to force a moral of a story, then you're put, like I said, it's that kind of, you feeding them this, it's a carrot on the stick, right? Or type thing. You look at older proverb type stuff. So when here's what happened in the story, and then you have to like essentially extrapolate the moral. And then a lot of modern media, it's all, don't do this because it's bad, right? And you're like, oh, okay, but
I feel like you're being lectured.
Yeah.
And when you put things in such black and white terms in the law, it's like the even I think this is a biblical proverb talking about it, but like the more laws you make, the more you like kind of clean the mirror essentially of reflection, where it's like, oh, if you keep making, when you have 1 billion laws, you're going to keep breaking 1 billion laws. Making laws doesn't make you better. It just shows how bad you are, kind of type thing.
It's showing that you had to make a line.
You had to have restraints.
Yeah, it's showing that we had to make a way to show restraint because we couldn't without there being a repercussion or there actually being a line.
Yeah.
So versus just being like, okay, if you're giving a black and white rule, like, think about current days. If someone says, don't touch the button, right? Don't push that button. So someone's like, well, I'm gonna drop something on it, so I didn't push it, right? Yeah, or yeah. Either they're gonna be like, I'm not pushing it, or they'll do. People will do something that doesn't do it, or if you do in an older proverb type story, it'd be like, the rule would be like, oh, maybe listen to your elders, right? Which is kind of more a general thing of like, respect your elders. And so when you have the elders say, hey, don't push that button, they're like, oh, okay, cool, because that's something I've learned, that respect the people who have authority and those kind of elements.
Sure.
Versus being like, oh, well, they didn't say to not hit the button if I accidentally pushed the button, or I rewired it, so I technically didn't push it. I went to the back and pushed
it into a switch.
Yeah,
I turned it into a switch, so I'm not pushing a button.
That might be one of those terrible parodies that you guys were talking about at the beginning of this video, where you're like, Joel, we need to give you a Proverbs book. But I feel like the example.
No, that one was pretty. That was pretty straightforward.
Solid, yeah, you're good.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where people's choices. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, because we're talking about black and white, and this show for sure, or this movie, I mean, is, again, it really isn't a very black and white thing. And I think my favorite part of, like, one of my really favorite parts is the end, where they actually have the reporters going around and them asking everyone. Because to me, it's like, it really hammers that moment home. Because like they said, this whole time, you kind of sit there and go, yeah, it's almost like you could feel that it's in the real world that this could kind of happen, obviously. But then again, like I said, the whole time there is this push between, well, is this moral? Well, should you be doing this? And obviously you have Willem Dafoe's character who kind of goes, you guys are breaking the law. At the same time, we're getting rid of some evil people who always get away from the law. So should I let this happen? And even in that final scene, he does do it, but when he sees him shoot everyone, he still kind of has that look of horror on his face of seeing what he let happen.
Right.
A little bit, but it's like there's still that, but then like so it's always in this gray, and then it really is compounded at the end because, like I said, you have the people being interviewed. Oh man, the Boondock Saints, they're awesome. They really care about this. Another person goes, I don't care who you are, you shouldn't be doing that. And I love that the movie actually ends asking that question of people, and then letting the audience go.
Absolutely.
No, that's exactly the point. Which is when you're forced to put yourself in the situation, go, oh, what would I say? That's always the trick, right? Because if you put, it's kind of like the life or death situation, right? When someone's like, oh, would you save your significant other or yourself in a life or death situation? And everyone's going to say at the moment, oh, I'd save them, right? I'll sacrifice myself. Right. And that's always the challenge, because it's impossible to put yourself into it. So until if you're sitting there going, okay, and you're being honest, you're like, well, I'd hope that I'd be willing to sacrifice my life for my significant other in that situation. If, I hope my gut instinct isn't to cower in fear, that kind of thing. Those are, to me, like the more tricky things, because you can be like, okay, there's all times that I go, hey, how does that person think? Because there's occasionally times that people say stuff and I'm like, how would I put myself in your mindset? And there's things that people say that I'm like, I can't even understand your mindset. And there's things that I'm like, okay, I could understand. I disagree with maybe your mindset, but I can understand. It's like, because we talk about movies and all the stuff that we like or dislike. So someone's like, oh, I like this show or I like this movie. I'm like, cool. Sometimes there's certain movies I'm like, oh, I can understand that. I can see where you're coming from and why you might enjoy a movie. And I know art's very subjective. But then there's things that, like, there's other movies that I'm like, I don't know how you can like that. Or it's art's more subjective in that space. But there's things that people will say they like, and I'm like, I don't understand that. I don't know how you're doing it, but okay.
Like, you be you.
Right. I mean, that's the great thing. Is the freedom,
boat, right?
I mean, that is the
whatever floats
part.
your banana, or something like that.
Right. Jeez, Peter Griffin. That is the important part. A lot of it, though, is the freedom of being able to enjoy that. I think that's where the interesting thing. It's a larger conversation, and I hope to do some stuff on it in the future. But the element is, in the past, I found that this kind of movie, this was like a work of love. This movie, right? He didn't make much money off of it. It cost him a lot of work and all these elements. And I feel like this was someone who crafted this project. And I don't know all the tribulations and trials behind it. I know there's some, but I don't know all the details that he experienced and everyone not working on experienced. But I feel like a movie like this, they crafted it, created it, and they kind of offer it to go, here, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you'll enjoy this with me as the artist and the creative. And I feel like a lot of newer movies, especially shows and newer movies that come from a more corporate, especially like I said, late 20, current era corporate structure type movie. And it's more along the lines of, you must consume this. Like, there's no longer like the creative level of, oh, well, here, I'm going to put a booth out here, put a sign up and say, I have a really delicious cherry pie. I hope you come and try it. I feel like now they want to invade your house and be like, this
cherry pie.
You have to eat this now and you have no other options. And if it sucks, I don't care because I didn't put much effort into it because I know I'm coming into your house and shoving it down your throat. So if it sucks, I don't care because I'm taking money from your wallet right now and it doesn't matter. And I feel like that's what's happened more on the media side. It's why I feel like I said, in the general, we complain a lot about movies and you've probably seen our videos, Hunter, on a lot of this stuff. And it's not something I always want to do. I love the opportunity to be able to rant and stuff like this, where we have these really positive, like a movie that we really enjoy, or like Christopher and me talk about some anime stuff that we really enjoyed, like the My Hero Academia. We had a great episode on that. And I've been watching, based on the recommendations, I've been watching Assassination Classroom this week.
Good.
Started watching that, and I'm really enjoying it so far. And I'm going, sweet. And it was one reason why I love anime currently, because there's so much variety in the storylines and so much variety in what you get to watch that's unexpected. That's and they have
absolutely
character. They're it's animated material, but in a lot of ways it's much more live action, narratively driven than like American Dad or Family Guy
Yeah.
or The
Oh,
Simpsons,
yeah.
where it's a one-off. Like, okay, here's the comedy of the week. I mean, there's the Sidemen. I think they want to cancel The Simpsons, or they're Conus. I think they're on the last season or last couple seasons, and I'm like, man, I really would love. I really love to see a season where they're like, they start aging up the characters every episode or something. Like, I would love that. That like they have
actually
that
end the series.
Yeah, like
Give
a whole
it some kind of closure.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're like, okay, we have 32 years or 30 years of the same thing. All the characters are the same age. And, they have episodes where they age the characters up for, an episode. They're like, oh, this is Maggie in the future, and this is Bart in the future. He's like Supreme Court Justice. And I'm like, it'd be great to see, like, oh, Lisa in college, Bart in college, or Bart in high school, or, a little older. I think would be a fun thing to end if I was to end the show, that's what I would do. Give me a season of just slowly aging them up every episode. Yeah, and I know that's probably not going to happen, but I think it'd be fun because there's little things that you see that you're like, oh, it'd be interesting to see these characters, what they're dealing with in, 5 years. Because I'm like, have we not had enough of them doing the same thing in the same place? But with anime, it's different because
without change, without
yeah,
development.
And anime is a little different because I don't think there's any anime shows that have run 30 seasons. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any
Naruto?
30.
Maybe Inuyasha.
Inuyasha or Naruto, I think you're.
No, Inuyasha was only 5. Inuyasha was only 5.
One Piece?
Oh, yeah, probably. One Piece, I think.
Has been on forever.
Yeah, One Piece might. I don't know if it has that many. It might have that many episodes, though. They might be able to match them in episodes because I think they have I think One Piece has 800 episodes.
I want to say One Piece and Inuyasha are the ones that have 2 of the at least highest count for episodes.
You're probably thinking it's not Inuyasha because Inuyasha only had 5 seasons. You're probably thinking.
But there's a lot of episodes.
There was a lot of episodes per season in each season.
Yeah,
it's a long running series because people I've heard have made the joke like, oh, this anime that I'm watching is getting the Inuyasha syndrome or the Inuyasha problem, where it just kind of drags on forever and ever.
That one's so fast to burn through. Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball Z. Yeah.
It's another one that I've watched since I was a kid, and it's still going. It's
yeah, and that one. Those are even those ones. I would say that the best example definitely of that would be the One Piece because it's still the same group. I feel like Dragon Ball's reset, right? Because they have different Dragon Ball universe. Like there's different versions of the. Like there's Ultimate or I think I see it on Cartoon Network all the time. There's the Ultimate version or something like that. Or,
yeah,
I think that's the one they're on right now. Yeah.
But I think that new one's still continuing the original Dragon Ball.
Is it? I don't know. That's one of the world's
storyline.
I never watched that one growing up. I remember people watching it. Like there was the 2 that maybe Pokemon 2. Is Pokemon still on?
Yeah, I think
it's still a card game. I know they're coming out with new cards.
I know it's random off-topic conversation, but we're just enjoying this now.
It's also hard sometimes because there's certain shows that don't.
I know.
There's certain shows that also too, like the animes. That's there's a different name. Or a partially different name a little bit afterwards. So it's it's because you have the original Pokemon with Ash, but then you had the Pokemon XD, and then you had the Pokemon. Yeah, exactly. Because then it was it wasn't Ash and Misty anymore. Then there was the brunette chick. That's when I left. Couldn't take that anymore. Yeah. There's no more Misty. There's no more redheaded Misty. I'm out. Give me a redhead. This is Irish. This is St. Patty's Day.
Brock and Misty made it. Wasn't
come on,
Ash.
That's funny.
And the world will turn to Ash. How do you feel about that right now, Ash? I wish my mom would have called me Bob.
Did you really say that?
He does actually say it's in the movie. I think it's the Pokemon movie because
I didn't watch that in a long time. I don't remember.
The quote is or the prophecy is Mewtwo comes back and then the whole world will turn to Ash, and then and then they realize it's actually talking about him, and he's and then the reporter's like, well, how do you feel about this? He's like, I wish my mom would have called me Bob.
That's funny. I do know that One Piece is one we're going to start watching, and I'm like. 800 episodes. I'm like, oh my goodness, because we've been watching Fairy Tail. I really like Fairy Tail. I don't know. Do you watch a lot of anime, Hunter? I wasn't sure how much you watch.
Enough. I mean, I'm not I haven't started One Piece, and there's a lot of classics that I haven't watched.
So have you seen Hunter?
Recently got into anime within the last I don't know.
Hunter. No, I don't think we've.
I think I've seen a couple episodes.
Okay, I was just curious because, yeah. The interesting thing with different shows because there's the different magic systems and there are certain shows that I'm like, what world would you want to live in? And it's hard to the conversation's a tricky.
None.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because you have to have seen a lot of anime to be like, which world would I live in? But I would say personally, Fairy Tail is one of the worlds that I'd be like, yeah, their power systems and it makes no sense at all. And it's really just the power of friendship and love, and that's your power scaling. But I do love the world because, I do love the world because
I would live in Soul
you don't
Eater.
die. You don't die in Fairy Tale though, or it's really hard to die.
Yeah,
Would you
yeah,
die?
yeah.
See, the way I look at it, if I was gonna be like, which world would you jump into? My thing would be, how powerful can I be in it, and what's my likelihood to die? Because there are shows like Agame La Kill that you're like, yeah, you're gonna die in that one, or what else?
Attack on Titan.
Oh yeah, Attack on Titan.
Like,
thank you.
no one's sitting there going, you know what? I want to be on Attack on Titan. Give me that 3D maneuver. I totally got this. I will be better than everybody.
No, Attack on Titan, your likelihood
dead.
of survive. Yeah, you're dead. We're dead. That's.
I was just gonna say,
inside the wall,
can I
outside
just
the
play
wall.
it safe and just say I would live in like the Yu-Gi-Oh world.
Mm-hmm.
Like the worst thing that's gonna happen
Totally.
is you get sent to the Shadow Realm, but they always seem to get back. So
Yeah, it's cool. Just make sure you're around Yugi, and you're
No,
good.
that's literally. That's why I was
we
like,
are
Fairy
getting
Tale.
off topic though here, guys.
I know.
I don't mean to. I don't mean to.
No, we're good. It's like I was like, well,
But anime itself could be a cult class or a cult,
Oh yeah.
Oh, totally.
cult
Totally.
classic kind of genre of its own.
This is why it's fun talking with all about the stuff, because we're just going to go off on awesome tangents and
Right.
stuff. So
Yeah.
I know I initiated that one, but any other thoughts from you guys? I feel like I've wrapped up my thoughts, but any thoughts from you guys on like final thoughts or scenes you wanted to hit on or etc.
Can we see the cat scene?
I don't want to play the cat scene on here.
Okay, that might get.
It's a little intense.
I'm trying to think of at least a good scene to get a good.
Don't give
laugh.
it away for people that haven't seen it.
Fair
'Cause
enough,
That scene
fair
just
enough.
makes me like cry laughing. It's intense. You guys will love it.
Yeah, it's a funny scene. I mean, it's a terrible scene, but it's funny.
It's it's dark humor.
And-
Not everyone's
yes.
gonna get it, but it's for some people.
And I think that's also too what I think usually something about dark humor and dry wit sometimes I think comes out a lot farther in cult classics, and that's why people like them. But that's why people are like, you liked that joke? Yeah, I was rolling on the floor laughing. I was losing it at that joke. Yes,
Absolutely. There was just one quick point I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Another tie-in that I saw between a lot of the cult classics that I was looking at. They always seem to deal with really mature themes or really dark, I don't want to say occult themes or like paranormal themes, but dark people that just have really dark lives or depressing things that have happened to them. I think of like Donnie Darko. Again, that weird kind of out there. Is it paranormal? Is it sci-fi? Kind of ties in with Wrist Cutters. I know that's probably a really abstract one. I'm sure a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know
haven't
that
seen
one
now.
actually.
Like Wrist Cutters, a love story or something like that. Long story short, these two people end up committing suicide, and they had been in, if I remember correctly, they'd been in a relationship beforehand, maybe, or they were ex-lovers, something like that. They both kill themselves. They both find each other in the afterlife in like this purgatory thing, and have to find a way to the next life, whether that's heaven or hell or whatever. I don't really remember how it ended, but it's again really obscure and really heavy, and you feel the emotions throughout, and you start caring for these characters on a level that you don't see in pop movies. You see it more in, like we're talking about, the animes, the cult classics, the more low budget grainy films that really stick with you.
you see the. Might you say it in that sense? Like you see in a lot of these shows, you see the grittiness of humanity, not this polished version that usually is shown in movies. And like you said, even then, if a movie's trying to show a bad thing, that it's still like a polished version of like, oh well, this, if they're gonna do an alcoholic, then somehow they're still kind of. It's not the full real humanity of if you were an alcoholic or if you were
the funny
this.
stumbling,
Exactly.
slurring your words, ha ha ha, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's drunk uncle.
Yeah,
Mike
like,
or whatever.
yeah, it's like, or this is the person who's, whatever it is. But yeah, it's always still this very, like, they don't want to make it too human because maybe they feel like that's, I don't know. Like, to me, I'm like, well, that's art. That's
too
exactly
real.
where you
It's
want to
too
go
real.
to. But yeah, apparently they don't see it that way. So, but that's, yeah, I would agree. It's like there's something about that little, like you said, maybe not like in the super dark, but just very mature themes, very, very human pains or emotions.
The realness of human beings.
Raw.
The intensity of them. The true monsters that they can be, or the angels, the guardians they can be.
Yeah.
Depending on what side of the fence they stand on and what choices they make.
I think that's well put there on that.
To pull from part of my, YouTube namesake from Hunter S. Thompson, any of his books, he really points out just how animalistic people still are and can be and always will be to some extent. We follow our instincts. We all want meat, fire, and a loved one. It's basic. And I think cult classics have a very brilliant way of showing that human side of humans and making us, like you said, look in a mirror and kind of confront things that we might not generally want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
that's why I like them.
Said.
Yeah, I always think I always think they're some of the most thought-provoking movies. Is usually that cult classic that I've watched. That's like, man, you really asked a question that sticks with me, or you answered a question about something that really sticks with me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that raw nature you talk about, I think that's the important key to it there, which is, and I talk about it a lot in other mediums where they'll say like, oh, this is a dark movie because they film it at night. It's my joke, like the DC movies are like, it's a dark movie because we filmed it at night in the rain. And I'm like, no, the dark things are when you have to put characters in situations that force them to answer difficult questions, right? Because the questions
absolutely.
of, like we used earlier, which is, oh, who would you save, which loved one, right? And in the superhero realm, they'll put that, they've had that in Spider-Man, right? Save your girlfriend or your grandma or your aunt, right? Type situation. Mm-hmm. And usually in those movies, in the movie world, they save both because that's how it works.
They can always get away with it.
But it's also a bigger than life situation with superheroes and stuff. But when you can put characters in a space and it's not so much a villain trying to make you choose the situation, but it's more along the lines of life, right? Because you can't fight life so easily. You have to, like, the world turns and you can't always be like, well, there's something trying to, I'm not a villain, like I'm not a victim, right? Like there are, the world has things that happen that's not so much a victim. Things do happen to me and there can be choices you make. But in really good, these gritty stories like you're talking about, sometimes you put the characters in a situation where they're forced to deal with something that they might, like you put them in a situation in the woods and they're attacked by a bear and they're like, okay, do I leave my significant other or do I get help? They're going to live or die, or who do I pick on this kind of stuff? There's two people with you. You go, who do you carry? The one that's more wounded or my other person who's more likely to live? Like there's situations that could cause a death or undeath.
Or should I leave you guys both there and try to find help because I can then get the quickest by myself?
You start putting a lot of options out there and one might not be right or wrong depending on, hindsight, right? If you know what happens. And again, that's,
exactly.
There's one important part that in the vigilante stories, it's the reason vigilante doesn't really work in the real world, vigilantiness, is because in movies, we're almost a godlike character in the third party. We're seeing the criminals do the bad things. We see their intents. We see every part of the story go, okay, we got our players here, our players here, players here. We know they're bad guys. We know they're good guys. It's okay if they take each other out. Like I said, they're righteous. And so it works, like I said, to have a kind of divine inspiration in this story. But in real life, you could hurt somebody that you have judged as bad because you're like, oh, I don't like they parked in the wrong parking spot, or like I said, go on Twitter for 10 minutes.
A little cockeyed in there and partially into my handicap or whatever.
Yeah, and someone could be like, well, I need to be vengeful against this or all that kind of stuff. But you don't know behind the scenes, they could have just had a bad day. And said you don't have that kind of, and again, there are evil people out there. That is one thing that I do believe.
Oh, yes.
There are sick and evil people out there, and they aren't always caught by justice, the law, because of,
unfortunately,
lots of reasons, both chance, randomness, money, power, corruption. The list goes on. On the other hand, we don't want to live in a world either where, you sneeze the wrong direction, you get arrested either. I don't think it is, it's the unfair balance of reality and that's why the vigilante stories are good or enjoyed. Batman, right? He's the arm of justice we wish we could be for catching the people. That's why he works really well too. Is he's not
the people who slip through the cracks.
Correct.
Right, what gets to happen to them, and that's what and we get to see what happens to those people.
Right. It's kind of like that thing where you ever see someone driving and they blast past you 85 miles an hour on the actual shoulder. You're driving, and you're like, where's the cop right now? And you're like, if I was a cop, I wish I was a cop right now. I'd freaking pull them over and they're like, what were you doing?
Oh, absolutely.
Citizens arrest. Let's get this.
I feel like that's kind of, in the kinder sense, the motivation behind a lot of the stuff in the vigilante world. Where you're like, oh, I caught you. What were you thinking? Type thing. Versus, like I said, in a story like this, where you're like, okay, you're dealing with people that you don't really know what's happening. Because you could pull someone and be like, dude, you just blew past me at 85 miles an hour on the shoulder. Everything you did there is illegal. I'm giving you a ticket for reckless driving. But to take a life because you're like, well, I don't like that you possibly are a gang member, is, like I said, that doesn't work in the world, because you're not really, you don't have that overarching, godlike, omnipresent
forethought. Exactly.
That we have in a narrative story going, oh, we saw you guys talking about murdering that guy and we saw you do it, so we know that you're the bad guy.
And we saw you kick the puppy, so we know you're really just a bad dude.
Right.
Kind of thing. And so you're like, okay. I'm glad when that bullet gets to go through you, because you just been a jerk. But yeah, like you said, in real life we don't always see everyone, and man, how often, I know for myself, personal story real quick, to driving, I know, like, a lot of times I'm an angry driver. I hate when people do crappy stuff. And not too long ago, I was the jerk who was like, you need to get the heck over. I'm trying to get up on this ramp. And I revved over, and right then I realized I had just cut someone off who was right on my blind spot. And I was like, oh, I'm the jerk. I'm the jerk, waving my hand behind going, I'm sorry, my bad. So it's like...
But at least you acknowledge it.
Right. At least I acknowledge it. But it's like, again, admittedly, that person was still right on my butt for a while there, and just like kind of revving up there, and I was finally like, okay, you can calm down now. I did put my hand back. I was trying to give him exactly. It's like, but I know I've been the exact same on the other side, doing the same thing, going, what are you thinking? Then you finally get to the window. So, vigilante justice,
funny.
Yay!
Yeah, it doesn't always work. I said that's why we enjoy these movies.
Nope.
We'll see what they do with this in the future. They said there's a second movie. Supposedly they're working on a TV show. Who knows? Nowadays, that's its own proposition.
They? Really?
There was something announced a couple years ago. Things take so long to develop. I don't think it's a good property for that, to be honest.
No.
I love the unison. I agree. I don't think every show needs a prequel series or a after series. I think what makes this special is, and it said, in light of St. Patrick's Day and stuff, is we do love the Irish theme of this movie. It has a thick Irishness, which you don't.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which you don't see so often in movies. I don't think there's many movies that have this really strong Boston Irishness to it. So I do love that, and it was done respectfully too in the movie. And it was that that honor level.
Well, I don't know, Joel. I think there's a point where as Greenlee says on there, he's like, well, if you want to find him, why don't you just drop a potato and just walk it down Main Street. Thanks for coming, or something like that.
Hilarious.
Like, find him.
Okay, we can laugh potato humor. I mean, that's like
you have better luck with a beer.
Yeah, you'd have better luck with beer.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've been to Ireland, I don't know. I'm terrible with
the honesty of that too. Like,
it's so funny.
We have a family member who married a full Irishman, and when he had a little booze in him, it was pretty freaking hilarious because he was like 90 years old, 94 years old, and he'd have a drink of wine, and his accent would get so thick, and it was like he
just the deepest top of the morning. Yes. I mean, come on.
It was
when
a
people
pretty
have like unknown accents or like things you wouldn't hear them on a regular basis. They get a little bit of booze in them or something, and it just comes out of nowhere. And
and he had the old school. I
that's
said, he was
what
like,
you actually sound like. Huh.
I didn't know you were from Chicago.
Right. Any last comments from you guys? Any last comments for you guys on this one?
Go and watch this movie. St.
Yes.
Patrick's Day.
Yeah, if you're stuck inside,
if you were
quarantine.
stuck inside, you want, I mean, especially if you're Irish and you want some fun Irishness on there.
Right.
But I
This
mean,
is
in
not
general,
tomorrow is not the greatest day to go to. This weekend, next weekend's not the greatest time to go out to a bar because of reasons, the beer virus.
Yeah, just don't do it. Just don't risk it.
Yeah.
Download
Stay at home.
it, find it. You can probably get it for $10 online or rent it or find a way. There's probably a way to find it and enjoy this movie and enjoy it.
Grab your Guinness. Grab your Jameson.
Yep.
Grab
a pipe. And enjoy.
Gotta find mine.
Yes. So,
we might have to watch
everyone,
that.
thank you for joining us today. It's going to be a more week of videos. Hunter, thank you so much for joining us this time. It's your first one,
thank
so
you guys.
Congratulations. Thank you, man. Hope to have you on more on these kind of discussions.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, Fox. It's been great.
No, you're very welcome. Pleasure. And till next time, everyone, have a great day.